like
back
that.
in the house.
Point Black is back.
Point Black is back. And you know what? And we still black.
We're gonna be black. There's two things that's constant with us, and that's
Blackity black.
Well,
black
first
and taxes.
no. See, Daryl, I'm Adolphus Pruitt.
And I'm the Reverend Daryl.
And so
Gray.
I'm at that Daryl. First we were Afrikaners. Then we were Negroes.
No,
then we were niggers.
where did color
And
come in?
then then we were colored. And now we're black.
I think we've been niggars through all of those things. I think
BJ,
even with
that's
BJ, I
squirming,
think with all
BJ
of that.
didn't hit the button. You know, we're supposed to hit the button when we use that word, but we snuck it in.
Well, I think that BJ, the legendary DJ, Dr. Grand Marshal Holloway, needs to get his act together over there. Did I get it all right that time, though?
Oh, wow.
Did I get him all right, BJ?
You got all the titles.
I got him all
man.
right. I said BJ.
Oh, he cut the music. Hold on, man. You
So he
cut
can
us
do
off.
it. So he does know how to cut it off.
Oh my God, ladies and gentlemen,
He does know how to cut it off.
it's mayhem in the studio today. See, that's what happens when you give black folks a holiday.
I know.
See, we should have gave them Monday. We should have gave them Monday.
I know.
Ooh.
Got me thinking. Got me
We
thinking
shoulda
that
gave them
today
Monday.
is Sunday. I
Shoulda
know.
gave them Monday.
Mess me
See,
up.
BJ, this is a professional setup in here. Uh-oh. He gave me that look. He cut me
See,
off.
I love it. BJ has the power. So let me make sure. So the person with the power, and I'm going to get this right, is BJ, the legendary DJ, Dr. Grand Marshal. Would that be correct? Did I miss? Am I still wrong?
Don't
How
worry.
do I keep
Lady-
getting it wrong?
Hold on. Ladies
Okay,
and
I need a
gentlemen,
script. You need to write me out a script for
ladies
next
and
time.
gentlemen, we're supposed to be doing a show up in here. And I think we're going to get, matter of fact, you know, I think I mentioned on the show last time. It's election year, Daryl.
You know what you mentioned
didn't
that
know. It's election
you
year.
mentioned that on the last show that this is an election, and one would figure. But as I told you last year, I've been watching the trial, so
You
I'm
missed the election.
trying to figure out everything that's going to take place. Is not going to be understood until after the verdict comes out. When the verdict comes out, then I'm going to be a lot clearer about this whole election thing after the verdict comes
So
out.
have you heard the term black girl magic? You've heard it.
I understand
before.
I understand that there is a movement,
Yeah,
a black girl magic movement.
And every once in a while, we get some of that magic in the studio, don't we?
Well, listen, I think, to be honest with you, our next guest predates the whole idea of black girl magic.
Uh-oh.
This person has been producing magic in politics and community affairs and activism and advocacy long before the theme or title of Black Girl Magic ever materialized.
But wait a minute, gotta understand, she had a little boost because I guess has parents
Okay, that's what it was.
who've been in this
DNA,
struggle for
DNA,
a long time.
DNA.
So she had a little help.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the one and the only.
And the only.
Former state senator, former state representative, former everything, Maria Chappelle-Nadal. How you doing, Maria?
I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me here today and speaking with you and your audience. And I hope that I have something to offer that you guys will enjoy hearing about.
Well, we know you're running for Congress.
I am running for Congress.
You still running?
I'm still running.
You sure?
That's a
Yes.
That's a crowded race, boy. I'm telling you.
that, Daryl. She's
Listen,
running.
Once the senator, and my understanding is that once a senator, always a senator.
Once a senator, always a senator. And you can't
that's right.
pretend to be a senator. You can't pretend.
There you go. And that's why I always say senator. Senator, it's a crowded feeling, Adolphus, and we're going to jump right in it. When Adolphus talks about, Black Girl Magic, our current Congresswoman, first, in the history, she made history in becoming the first African-American female Congresswoman in the 1st Congressional District. And Pruitt talks about Black Girl Magic. For you, Senator, and Pruitt mentioned it, you've served in the legislature, in the House, you've served in the Senate. Why Congress? Why Congress and why now? Particularly when it's occupied already.
Well, you know what? You don't own a seat. Let's be clear about that. You don't own it. It doesn't belong to anybody but the people and the voters. And so let's make that clarity first. The second reason is we are in a really bad situation in St. Louis right now where people are suffering more than they ever have, that I've seen. Families, multiple generations living in one household. We have a lot of transportation issues, housing issues persist. All you have to do is look at North City and recognize the old neighborhoods that we used to cherish are no longer existing. And people find it very hard to get to the jobs that are actually paying well. And I see that every single day. But, the last 2.5 years, I've been looking at crime in St. Louis. And I knew it was a thing that young people used to get involved in gangs. I used to talk about it often as a state senator on the Senate floor. But when my younger cousin Isis Mar was killed by a child serial killer who had killed the first time at 9 years old, killed the second time at 14 years old, and killed my young cousin at 17 years old, I needed to get more involved in what the problem was. And I have been looking at violence in St. Louis County in particular. The issues that we have in the county are the same that we have in the city and in the region. All of this involves education and making sure that children have access to educational options that give them an opportunity to survive and succeed and be productive members of the community. But it's sad, to see many of these actors who are out on the streets, who some should not be. Now, we're not talking about minor offenses like having marijuana. We're talking about people who kill, and they kill multiple times, and they're out on the streets. That's why I'm running. I'm also running because I feel as our current congressperson hasn't done a good job when it comes to radioactive waste. I held the torch for years. Many people know me as having 100 town hall meetings within 2 years' time. And we haven't gotten too far when it comes to helping people with radioactive waste issues. And, I could talk about this forever. That's one of the things that you do when you are in the Senate and on that Senate floor. And instead of talking about genocide other places, we have a genocide in North County. And we need to address the fact that in people's backyards and on playgrounds and where people work, we have soil that is contaminated. We also have water that is contaminated, and people are realizing shorter lifespans. And so that's one of the things that I want to bring to Congress. There are a lot of issues that need to be addressed on behalf of St. Louis and the region. I am a huge supporter of Boeing. I would never protest Boeing, but I sure as heck would have a conversation with Boeing about the radioactive waste that surrounds their area and making sure that all of their employees are healthy and free from any burden of getting sick because of the legacy nuclear waste that they have in that area around the airport. And I also think that we just need to do something about homelessness. We need to figure out what the plan is going to be. I remember the first time that I ran for Congress in 2016, and I remember driving down St. Louis Avenue and looking at multiple homes that were vacant and thinking about, wouldn't it be great if we had a community for veterans and other people who are homeless and give them the one-stop shop where they can address their medical needs, they can address any needs that they may have, and also at the same time we're rebuilding our neighborhoods in the inner city. And so it's something that people talk about no matter what neighborhood you're from. Even people in Clayton talk about, what are we going to do about North St. Louis? And that's why I'm running. I'm running because we need someone who not only, and let me just get this very clear. I have more legislative experience than both of my opponents. And you could add the amount of experience they have together, and it doesn't amount to the span of work that I have done. And I have to say that just because you sit on a city council, that's not legislating. That's saying you could put up a stop sign, or you could put up a bumper, or something. You can address a new business. That is not legislating. Legislating is something that is very difficult and takes a lot of experience to do over and over again. It takes what we call making sausage. And so I think that we need to have someone who is competent in the area of experience. And we also need to have someone who is in Congress who can articulate the issues that people are struggling with here in St. Louis. And as I said, I'm running because crime is out of hand, and so many families are losing loved ones. The story does not need to get mixed up in who's the prettiest and who's the whatever. We're talking about issues.
But let me ask you this.
My last
break.
statement
Yeah, but we
is
have to take a
people
break.
don't want a show horse, they want a workhorse.
We'll be right back with more on Point Black. And we're back with Senator Maria Chappelle-Nadal, candidate for Congress in the Congressional First District. Yes.
Yes, it is. The Congressional first.
Right before we went to break, you had something there?
Yeah, I mean, as I listened to the senator, and when we had the last candidate on, Prosecutor Bell, and we asked this question about local issues and if, in fact, people on the campaign trail are talking about local issues. Senator, you talked about the fact that, and I'm sure that what is happening in Palestine and Israel is important to you as it's important to many of us. 34,000 innocent lives lost on both sides, but the way that you said it, should we be more concerned or less concerned, or does it need to be a balance, Senator? Particularly when you are in Congress, when you're using your voice, does there need to be a balance between local issues and those issues that maybe are, I don't want to call it general in nature, national in nature? Is there a place for that in Congress as well?
National security comes first, always. And whatever it takes to keep our nation secure and maintaining our democratic allies throughout the world, that is our first position. But as the Congresswoman of the 1st Congressional District, we must deal with the issues that people face every single day and make sure that they are able to live sustainable lives. So yes, it concerns me when there are shootings every single weekend and multiple shootings. Yes, it concerns me when people can't get to their jobs in West County. Yes, it concerns me when there are people who are homeless. Yes, it concerns me when young men are not getting the education that they deserve in their schools. Yes, it concerns me when people can't pay for their bills, just having a roof over their head or their utilities. Yes, it concerns me when people aren't getting the kind of leadership that they deserve, and that is why I am running. As I said before our break, people want a workhorse. They don't want a show horse. And it's one thing to take pictures with people all the time. It's another to actually use your brain and think and work with your allies on both sides of the aisle. And that is something that I have done for 16 plus years. I have not only worked in the executive branch of government, but I have also worked in the legislative branch of government. And I have to repeat again, and let me tell you, I was a school board member, and that's probably one of my favorite public service positions I've had, non-paid. It's been one of the best ones I've ever had. But let me tell you, nothing compares to being a congressperson and a city council person. And that's what Mr. Bell likes to talk about. And he can't even do a budget. If you look at his budgets for the last 5 years, which I've witnessed and I've looked at all of the videos, he can't even present a budget. And so, in all that is public information.
So let me ask you this, Senator. Say there's election, you win, first thing in Congress, what do you want to do?
Oh, I already know who I'm going to hire dealing with radioactive waste. It's my former intern who got her law degree in the interim since her time working for me in the office. She is an environmental lawyer, and she would be my first hire dealing with radioactive waste. I would also start on policy that deals with not only the federal government, but what local government should be doing to support the federal government when it comes to exposure to not only radioactive waste, but also forever chemicals that people are around every single day. The next thing that I would get to are really addressing the victims in town. There's so many victims who are dealing with the loss of loved ones, and it's part of the trauma that I hear about. People every day when I'm out with people, they're saying either thank you or stay safe. And it's not like we're sending emails or messages out, make sure you tell the person you see today thank you or stay safe. We have a dangerous community, and people just want to live that dream of being able to go outside, be in their gardens, or go out on a Saturday or Sunday or a holiday and know that they're going to come home safe and not have to be concerned about if someone's driving recklessly. And that's a problem, as we know. I would also address our housing issues that we have. It's children in education now talk about where they stay, not where they live, where they stay. And people are, I don't know if you've seen this, but I've seen this where people are traveling from one family member's house to the next, and all they have is a plastic bag with all of their belongings in it, right? And so it's unfortunate. We want people to be able to realize life and what life offers, and to succeed like others have succeeded.
So you hold on 1 minute. So you ran in 2015,
16, yes.
And you're running now. Can you triangulate what's the difference that motivated you in 16 versus now? What is the and have things changed over that period of time?
Yeah, the dynamics have completely changed. I mean, you had former Representative Lacey Clay, and we all felt that Mr. Clay, his time was up. But I also had this caveat. I always say they did incredible constituency work, so I don't want to say something negative and not say something positive, because every single time when I was in the Senate and in the House, Congressman Clay's office would always address the concerns of citizens, and I appreciate that, and I continue to. But the difference now is you have people without experience, right? So, and people who, we were all in Ferguson. I was the state senator when the Ferguson uprising happened, and I am the only person who was in that position where they had to be a mother, a translator, a teacher, and just someone who was there who had to not only translate to other legislators who were from rural areas what was going on that made global news in your district, but also I had to communicate to people who were on the ground, how does government work? And there are only a handful of people who ever served in the Senate as well as on the school board simultaneously in the state of Missouri, and I'm one of those people. So I knew at this juncture, when I was holding grown men cry because of what they had been experiencing, which had been and continues to be inequity in the system and otherwise, I knew that I had to be someone who was there not only as someone with empathy, but someone who knew how to translate that into policy. And that's what distincts me. I don't just go out every day and say, "Hey, I was in Ferguson, go vote for me." I'm not one of those people. I was there just like my opponents were there. The only difference was I was a policymaker and we were able to pass legislation. And there are other issues that we continuously face. And here's the other thing, quite honestly. You know, there are a lot of people who want to put a rubber band or a band-aid rather on the inequity that people experience every single day, and it's not working because all that happens is you rip off that band-aid and you still have that wound. People are still traumatized every single day by a system that is not working for them, that should be working for them. And that is what I offer in my candidacy for Congress.
And as I listen, Senator, Adolphus talks about 2016 and now. There's apathy, voter apathy is out there. It just seems like, we talk about former Congressman Clay, we talk about current Congressman Bush, we talk about Prosecutor Bell, yourself, former, state senator. I mean, this region has never been without black leadership. It's never been without black elected officials. I mean, we've this congressional district with state legislators, county elected officials, city elected officials, but still we still find ourselves, Senator, as far as black and brown people, with the short end of the stick. As you use words like show horse versus workhorse, as you talk about Congressman Clay, and in your words, trying to make sure that you communicate the negative and the positive. How do you intend, not as candidate, but as Congresswoman, how do you really intend to make a difference when historically in that position, it doesn't seem like we have? How do you intend to build the bridges between federal government, state government, city government, county government? How do you make that happen realistically?
Well, I've already done it. First of all, when I was a state senator, I represented 41 municipalities, and I held quarterly meetings with all of the mayors in the district, and they would come to me with their issues that they had at the municipal level. When it comes to policy, I could tell you right now, I probably have 10 or 15 different pieces of legislation that deal with how local, state, and federal government should be cooperating when it comes to radioactive waste. I know that because I see some of the dumb decisions that they're making at the county council. In fact, there's legislation, not legislation, but there was a proposal in St. Louis City that actually touched the issue of radioactive waste, and no one has brought that up, and I'm the only person who knows about it. So there was an RFP that was put out to clean up these smokestacks in the city of St. Louis, and they wanted to place some of this old contamination, in our landfills, and our landfill said, no, you're going to have to take that somewhere else. Well, someone who's competent would already know about this RFP and ensure that the local municipality, or in this case, the city of St. Louis, did all of the work that they needed to procedurally to make sure people were in a good place, not getting sick, understanding and communicating with the public that, hey, these smokestacks that we're sending out an RFP on, hey, they have some radioactive waste in them, right? But nobody knows about that. I know about that because the people who I talk to every single day knew about this RFP that was approved recently, where our own landfill owners would not accept any of that contamination because of what it has in it.
So, Maria, you mentioned about education, and you mentioned education options. So how do you stand on what's going on with education now? We have both public and charter. We have vouchers. We have all sort of stuff. So when you mention education options,
Yeah.
I just want you to clarify that just a little bit.
Well, you know what? Let me tell you. And I don't know if you guys have ever listened to inmate phone calls, because I do. In my work that I do now, I listen to inmate phone calls, and you could tell, what kind of educational background that person has had based on what they're talking about and how they're speaking. So, first of all, as a school board member in University City, I fully support public schools. Anytime you have a private option, they have to have the same standards as public education. And in fact, I think public education should have higher standards. I think that when you look at the group of criminals that I've been studying for the last 2.5 years come from the Riverview School District. Frankly, they all do. Every single one of them. And I'm counting murders. I'm looking at all of these police reports of people from this long-term unaccredited school district who have been quite violent. There is a pipeline when it comes to education and prison. And we need to make sure that we are giving all of the assets and support systems in place in our public schools, frankly. And I think that comes in multiple ways. One, we need more social workers. That's really important to have that. And frankly, we need more men who are in these schools who are helping our young men, guiding them in the right way. One of the things that we did in the University City School District, we had teachers go by the house. If there was an issue with a child, the teacher would go to the house and talk to the parent. And miraculously, these parents were like, oh my goodness, a teacher came to my house, and they started changing the behavior of Keisha or Darnell. And so I think that's really important to have that infrastructure in place in our school districts, but also in our communities. Now, here's the thing. I want your audience to recognize there are places in St. Louis where there are vacant buildings, vacant homes, and people live in between them. How safe do you feel when you're in a household and on each side of you is a vacant home with the windows out, maybe the roof that has caved in? How do you feel? Do you feel safe? Likely not. Well, as a congressperson, this is where I put, after national security, this is where I put my focus. We need to deal with our own safety here in St. Louis and ensuring that people are able to just make a difference in their own neighborhood and feel good about it, But I'm all about bringing resources back home. That's something that our current congressperson talks about. But when it comes to infrastructure, she didn't vote for that. There are a lot of issues that she didn't vote. There's another issue dealing with children. She didn't vote for that either. And again, what we need is a congressperson. I think I'm the only candidate who can say that they metabolize and understand an issue and are able to articulate that issue to make sure everyone understands what's happening. So, we used to have the saying in the Senate, you vote your district first, right? You vote your party, you vote your district, but you always vote your district first. That is my belief. So, in Congress, you need to be able to have allies in community. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of this legislation dealing with St. Louis hasn't passed, is because of the inability to communicate what is needed and why it is needed in St. Louis.
But the inability on behalf of who? I mean, I want to be clear, and I want our listeners to be clear. I think that you make an excellent case, Senator, as you talk about all of the local issues. And, it was the same question that we asked, one of your opponents in the last show. We're interested, I know our listeners are interested in knowing that you are listening to them. And I know what I've heard from you for the most part. You talk about, as you've been an advocate against radioactive waste. You've been an advocate, a very vocal advocate as it relates to contamination and such. And I think that people outside of that sphere, for the average person, they may not understand, how that may impact them across the entire congressional district. My question, as a voter in the first congressional district, again, our current congresswoman says she's delivered $2 billion. Now, she says that. You talk about resources. She talks about resources. You're running. Is that enough? Is $2 billion enough?
There's a difference between saying that you've delivered and then you realize you've just gone over 5, bumps on the road, right? Potholes, infrastructure happens to be very important. When you go to the grocery store, you're spending more money for less food. So talking about inflation is really important to the consumer, very important to every single voter as well. Talking about Social Security and making sure that it is stable and is not sold out, as the Republicans have been trying to do for decades now. It was put together as a safety net for all Americans, and playing around with that does not make sense. But I understand what people are going through because they're making decisions between their drug costs. They're making decisions, I can't afford as much as I used to be able to afford. And then, in St. Louis County, we actually have our taxes going up. So when you're looking at all of the increased costs, you're looking back and what do I have for it? So I bring in X amount of income every single week or every month, but what am I getting for it in return? What is government, and this is the critical question, what is government doing to ensure that I am proud of everything I'm getting back for what I work for?
So, what you just described, some folks would say is the primary reason why we have a lot of voter apathy in the black community. So how would you address voter apathy?
Speaking real, being on the streets, talking to people, I do that every day. I literally talk to people who are upset with their jobs, and how they're treated on their jobs, how they're talked down to on their jobs, how they're discriminated against on their jobs. Or they'll talk about the fact that, my grandmother is living with me now, and I have all of these expenses now. Between taking care of my son and taking care of my grandmother, I was spending, and this is a real story, I was spending $800 a month for rent. Now I'm spending $1,200 a month for rent because I have to make sure I have a space for my grandmother who's living with us now. I've seen people with the bags of clothes. They're going from one place to the next place. Guns. And that's one thing that we need to talk about is strengthening our gun laws. And so people see that.
We're going to take another break. We're here in the studio with Senator Maria Chappelle-Nadal, future Congresswoman, 1st Congressional District. If she has her way, we'll be right back with more on Point Black. And we are back.
Yes, we are.
Hey, Senator, I have to ask this question. Now, the average person that's looking at TV and the news and CNN, we see all the dysfunction up in Congress.
Yeah.
We see the fight between the Republicans and the Democrats. We see how hard it is to get legislation passed and to get things done. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying it necessarily in defense of our sitting congressperson, but I'm trying to understand that with the same sort of makeup, if that doesn't change in the Congress and in the Senate and things like that, what makes you think you would be able to do more from a legislative standpoint? I'm just trying to understand.
I've already been there. I've already been successful in a supermajority Republican legislature when I was in the Senate. And I can tell you there are 4 things I talked about in a forum that both my opponents were late to last month. But there are 2 things. I had 2 bills that were vetoed by a Democratic governor, and I had both of them overridden. And it was 2013 or 14, I want to say. One of them had to do with political subdivisions being able to vote from Zoom, and that wasn't legal. This is 2013, 2014. I was on the school board. I was on a mission in Taiwan, and we were voting on a $41 million bond, and they wouldn't let me vote. So I changed the law. So the governor vetoed it, and in a supermajority, we overturned it. The other bill that I made history on had to do with farmers markets and taxes. So, some farmers markets now are not taxed.
Mm-hmm.
And we care about urban farmers markets because there are a lot of people in limited income, and why should you be taxed on some of these products? So the governor vetoed that, and in a supermajority, we overrode that. I will also tell you that I've been successful. A piece of legislation that had funding this year, I actually wrote that. And Republicans didn't want to put money in for radioactive waste into this one budgetary item. I'm the one who put that in the budget.
Yeah, but Senator, I understand those dynamics then in the State House, but wouldn't you say that the dynamics in the Congress and the Senate now is so partisan?
It's always been that. Let me tell you something. There is a sweet spot, and I actually learned this from a Republican. I think his last name was Beard. But we don't have to be friends in that building, but we have to be able to communicate. That's when it's really incumbent on the congressperson to know what they're talking about. Because what people are looking for when they come from rural X state and people from their area don't look like you, they want to know that you know what you're talking about for your own district. And if you need a notepad to read and figure out what your district needs, and you can't just say it off the cuff of this is what we need and why we need it, this is why it costs this much. Like Wesley Bell cannot do a budget. He can't do a budget at the county council level. So what makes you think if he is in Congress, how is he going to explain the fact that we need X amount of money for the RECA program in St. Louis and the reason why it costs the amount that it does? If he can't do a local budget, what makes you think that he could do a national budget? And we're talking about millions of dollars. I'll also give you another example.
But let me. And every now and then I'm going to jump in, only because I think, in all fairness, though, Senator, I mean, if you become the congressperson, you're not going to be the one. I mean, you may be articulating on what should be in the budget, but you said it yourself. If you are elected, one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to hire somebody, a lawyer, a competent lawyer, to be able to deal with the finite things, the specific things like radioactive waste. I'm more concerned about, as Adolphus said, I'm more concerned about the issue, voting rights in this country.
Absolutely.
Gun control in this country,
Yes.
reproductive rights in this country,
Yes.
health care in this country. And as Pruitt said, and I understand what you're saying, and I applaud you for it, your ability to cross party lines, cross the aisle. In the State House, in Missouri State House, it's not easy. So we applaud you for that. But we've got some very major issues, particularly for us as black folk, and in the first congressional district, when we talk about these other issues, I think that.
Well, you know what? One of my proudest moments is filibustering for 39 hours and taking the lead on that. Neither one of my opponents has that experience. Neither one of my opponents has the experience of building a coalition of people from all kinds of backgrounds to bring resources back to the area that we represent. I do have that experience, so I understand what you're saying quite well. But if you don't have experience legislating and building a coalition and not isolating yourself, I understand the squad. I respect all the women in the squad, but the squad is prohibiting resources from coming to St. Louis.
Is there a person in Congress, based on what you described, is there a person in Congress now that you think reflects what you're saying?
Let me tell you. Let me tell you who I like. Let me tell you. I like. Did you guys hear what Congresswoman Crockett?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she's
now.
So
I'm a Crockett. I'm a Maxine Waters.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm mixed. I'm in that area. But you never want to isolate yourself.
Well, sure.
That's the first thing. You don't want to isolate yourself, and unfortunately, that's what I believe our current congressperson
But I mean,
has
somebody
done.
that's working across the aisle and actually getting Democrat that's working across the aisle that's getting legislation done.
You know
in the
who
Congress.
I go to? Let me tell you who I go to. And this is historical. It's not current. It's historical. Tip O'Neill.
Okay.
Tip O'Neill is one of those people who was always able to reach across the aisle. And it's important people, I mean, and frankly, because I served with Senator Schmidt in the Senate, I think it would be very easy to have these conversations. In fact, most of the legislation that I got done was with a lot of times was with his support because he was from North County.
Right.
And so I was representing the area where his family was from. So he was very supportive when it came to things like radioactive waste. Now, when it comes to abortion, I'm going to be standing for hours talking about how important it is to get into law that a woman has the ability to govern her own body. I mean, that's right now, a woman's body is under attack from the time she's born till after she gets menopause and when she's in the nursing home. I mean, for the entirety of a woman's life, she's at war with the system and trying to get her needs met. Obviously, because I have been studying crime for the last 2.5 years in St. Louis, and luckily there's a podcast that's coming out called After the Uprising, Season 2, and it's really going into the death of Darren Seals and figuring out who his murderer is. And I suggest that people listen to that because we touch upon people who are in jail cells now, people who, were suspects of murder. We talk to people who are in the rap game in St. Louis and in New York. But we're all trying to figure out, who killed our beloved Darren Seals, who was in the movement, who was a beautiful, radical person who wanted justice and equity for all of his people. And that's what I have been on a journey trying to discover with a team of people from throughout the country.
We want to make sure that as you have referenced your podcast After the Uprising, we want to make sure that our listeners remember, if you want to follow us, you can follow us on any social media platform, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter. You go to Point Black STL, at Point Black STL, at Point Black STL, or you can go to the iHeartRadio app, which is what I always do. Go to iHeartRadio, type in Point Black, hit the talk back mic, and let us know what you think about the show, or if you have any recommendations. Senator, I think that I don't know where we are in the time. You're going to take us out.
You're going to take us out.
How many seconds do I have?
About 35.
Okay, so here's what I would say. Thank you for listening to me today. And I want you to really think hard about who you want in Congress. You want someone who can do the job, someone who can think on their feet, someone who can read and also metabolize the information, the complexity of the information, but someone who's also going to see you at church on Sunday, someone who's going to see you at the gas station or at the grocery store every single weekend, someone who plans to make sure St. Louis is their home and not Washington, D.C. as their home. You really want someone who is going to attend to your needs and not just bring like a pretend appearance of caring, but someone who is going to do the job and know that it is rough and it is hard and it just takes every single muscle, every single ounce of energy that one has. And I could say that I'm the person. I'm asking for your vote. I am going to do the job because I've done it, and I have done it with honor. And when I'm given a mission, I always accomplish my mission. And that's why I served with distinction. I was elected and reelected 8 times, not only in the Missouri House, not only in the Missouri Senate, but also in University City as a school board member simultaneous to being in the Senate. And that is a rarity and an honor.
Got it. Daryl, I think we're done.
I'm telling you the truth. Great candidates. One thing about St. Louis 1st Congressional District, we are not leaderless. We are leaderful. We want to thank the senator for being on the show today. All our listeners continue to stay tuned to iHeartRadio, and we'll see you on the radio.